Oh, whoa. The substrate sync. Just got a relatively light agenda today, so we'll just kind of get through it. I think right off the bat, there's some Substrate Java visitor changes that are ongoing right now that I'm asking for feedback on from other people. The summary of it is that Neil wants to add a context parameter to the visitor so you can thread state through the visitation. You don't necessarily need a generic parameter like that. You could theoretically just do it via like pushing and pulling in the visitor. It's like pushing and popping context from the stack without it. But it is kind of nice to have it be part of the API because it means that you can't screw it up.
Yep.
I like it, but I also only sort of write Java. I have like a Scala background, so I see like classes of like 3 generics, and I'm like, yes, this is great. But I figured it would be good to get feedback from other Java people to make sure it's not, too obscene. But yeah, that's just kind of a call for review there. Actually, there's also some Substrate Go work that's been ongoing, David. I think you've been looking at some of it, and I think someone, Datadog is taking a look at it as well to kind of review it. And I could take a look at it, but I'm not really a Go expert, and I don't know what the strategies are for that library. So if you want to take a look, or if Matt takes a look, that'll be good too. But
yeah, I think there are a couple of strategies, but I don't think there are any active users right now, except for I guess major users, because obviously people who are doing it are interested in making changes because they're using it. But
yeah, we're starting to actively use it internally, and actually we're writing a little bit of like a BFT style testing framework internally. Instead of targeting SQL, though, we're generating Substrate plans directly and then running them against various engines, and the plan is to open source it eventually. And we're using Substrate Go as part of that to generate the Substrate data and then serialize it. So we're starting to use it more heavily internally.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and then there's another. This has come up in PRs as well. This is a PR that Tokuko has put up, which is about adding relations to extended expressions. And I think the question I have is about what the intended purpose of extended expressions was. I think when we created it, we didn't have like any relations attached to it. And in the context, he's trying to handle the reference relation, a reference rel in the expression. So having an expression with a subquery that takes a reference to another relation. And the thing I wasn't sure about is whether the intent was to have extended expressions actually handle like relations at all or contain relations, or whether that should just be, if you want relations in any way, use a plan, use like a standard plan rel fully.
Well, I mean, the problem is that you don't, for reference rels, the definition of a reference rel is it points to plan rels. So you can't, without a plan rel, you can't actually, you can't point to you can't use the reference rel. I mean, you could.
The PR in question is adding basically a plan rel like listing, so you can include relations into the plan, into the extended expression thing.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to add a plan rel at the top level for the extended expression for it to work. But it's almost a plan at that point.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether the intent of the extended expression was to have we want a construct that is only top level expressions, versus we want a construct that allows to make allows embedding expressions easy without requiring all the machinery of a plan rel. Like I'm not sure if it's like sugar for basically a planless, like a substrate exchange, versus like its own thing that should be fully supported. Whether you want to have a plan of a top level project or a top level relation, or a plan of top level expressions, basically.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be this thing. It's supposed to be a way of communicating a portion of a plan, whether it's for an IDE or some user experience or something like that. I mean, at least that's what I generally remember. And there is that doc. There is a PR out there that's got some documentation for extended expressions that's sitting around. Probably out of close because it's over a year old at this point. That might provide a little bit more background. But
docs fix pros for extended expressions.
Yeah. I also looked into this extended expression thing because it's there and it sounds like relevant for our scenario. And the original intent was this is like purely just it's a way to communicate a serialized scalar expressions, not necessarily including like any relational things. So yeah, so
It's almost
I-
a UDF definition.
Yeah,
UDF
it feels like
maybe,
a
yeah.
lighter plan rule where it's like I really only want to be able to serialize scalar functions, aggregate functions, and maybe even window functions, but I don't need the full machinery to define a plan.
Right. And if you decided you wanted a full expression, then the only difference between the full expression with all the relations and stuff, which means you can start pulling in data and all this other stuff, it's really looks like there's hardly any difference between it and a plan if you're going to go that far.
The difference ends up being that you have a top level, you have to have like a top level project to put your expressions in. And at that point, it's like you might as well just do that and not have two equivalent entry points. Where I think if the intent is to keep one simplified, cool. I'll ask about it in Slack as well, just to follow up with this discussion. But it's just kind of like trying to figure out what the intent of that was. I mean, intent also.
What is their use case? I guess is really what it comes down to.
That's the other side of it. I think it sounds like they're using the extended expressions as an intermediate representation inside of Substrate Python while building up plans. And maybe the answer there is like we should have a dedicated representation in Substrate Python, or like while building plans that don't depend on the protos.
Yeah, I think that really comes down to why are you trying to, for your intermediate representation, change a communication protocol? Just update your representation would make more sense.
Yeah.
I think that if that's the use case, then yeah, it doesn't belong in the communication protocol. It's come up with a different data structure.
Yeah, and I think most of the libraries end up there, where you have the core protobufs, but then you also have the language specific and language like pattern or the representation that better suits the pattern, because working with the raw protobufs is actually a pain most of the time.
Interesting.
And it's Python, so you could like modify the protobuf if you really wanted to. Could cause issues, but still.
Please do not monkey patch the protobufs.
Luxury.
Okay, no, this is good. I just kind of wanted to get initial feel on it. I think there's definitely a meta thing about like intent may not matter. We should definitely let you people do what they need to do, but it's not necessarily. It's good to understand why this thing exists the way it does.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's it for like concrete agenda items. That we can kind of get on to review stuff or pending reviews or things we want to highlight. Okay, looks like the ties of federal stuff is still ongoing. I can try and ping. Okay, yeah, so you replied to Jackson. You guys replied. Right, Youngshul? Okay, yeah, it sounds like. Oh, I'm looking at the Fetroils PR. It sounds like you've already commented. You were the last one to comment on it, so it sounds like you're waiting on response from us. Okay, so you can try and follow up. And let's check. Is this blocking anything for you internally?
No. Okay. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice if we can just use the standard proto rather than an extension, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's a put an action item for me on that. There's another PR that's been posted, which is the clarify the expected behavior of joints. Okay, so this is probably mostly done. It just needs to kind of get pushed over the edge. I'm trying to go through and clean up some of the backlog myself. I think I have a couple open ones that I need to follow through on as well. Actually, there's one waiting on feedback from, so I think this is from Jesus Camacho, or is it? Yeah, Jesus Camacho, which is the bar binary type support, which I think I just requested some small changes on, but I think otherwise looks good. Is this still at Microsoft, Youngchul?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. But I think that one's, we can, a little bit of feedback, we can move that forward. And then I'm following up on the add anchor for non-ordinal plans, which I think Drin was working on. And that's where the question about relations and extensions came up, because I think Tornike was asking about it there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think that gives us like 4, and then I'll get the ball moving on some of them. Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. I think there's some further back in the past, but we'll start with the present ones and go backwards, because some of them have been open for almost a year now. Actually, that's probably longer than I would like, but if no one is yelling about them, they're probably not urgent. Yes, any other items or questions or thoughts for today? Cool.
Mm.
Did you have anything else you wanted for the dialect stuff?
Oh, that's another PR I need to follow up on. I think we just need to get the free approvals we need. Or free, I don't remember anymore. We're actually in OKR playing right now, and we have a lot of work that's going to build off of that once that's available. So that'll be good. Actually, Youngchul, I remember we talked about type variations a while back. Were you working on anything around that, or is that still kind of pending?
So the last discussion was maybe the type variation is not the one that we trying to use, or the user-defined type. So basically extending user-defined type to support some sort of like simple inheritance, so that you can easily leverage the base class functions for the new types. That would be probably better approach. So I think that was our last kind of like consensus. So I haven't had a time to actually draft some proposal. And I don't know, like I would like think so for us, I think it is straightforward. From if your base type is a user-defined type, then the behavior is kind of like straightforward. But what if we want to extend the base type? Then it's kind of funkier, because the data section is, I don't know, like, so naturally, if you inherit from the base type, you inherit all the member field, and then you're adding a few others. This is straightforward in programming language. But if you inherit from the base type, then, well, like you cannot really use the base types. I mean, base type, not user-defined type. What will be the data for your base?
It's like, how do you represent the data in your system, or?
Well, first of all, like, well, how are you going to? Oh, okay. So let's say in C++, you have a struct A, and struct A has a field A, and you have struct B inherit from struct A, and struct B has a field B. Struct B also have access to base field A. So struct B inherits all the field from the base class, and also the method from like exposed inherited method, protected method, and public method of struct A.
Mhm.
So in Substrate, if we extend or if we follow like similar inheritance system, then if you're inheriting another user-defined type,
Mhm.
then we could match the behavior, right? We can, so I can define like another extra couple of field, and then I implicitly also inherit all the base class field.
Okay.
And then I can have some, I don't know, introduce some sort of like modifier to either I override the base, override certain specific method for this particular type, or actually hide the inheritance for the base type. So basically selectively control like which functions are bindable to this type or not.
Yeah, I thought that was the primary kind of discussion around the
Right. Yeah.
separation was kind of binding functions to variants of existing types.
Yes. Yes. So now that I'm saying maybe this is not really a type, but more of trait or say interface.
Yeah, that might be the way to think about it. Is try not to do multiple inheritance, but be like we can tag types with certain properties, like all the numeric types can be orderable to some extent, and then all of the comparison functions can be based on that trait effectively. And I think like the things that I've been thinking about are like string versus string UTF-8 view, or views for thinking about data fusion specifically, where I guess it is a type variation. So it's a different physical representation of a string. So maybe the classic type variation concept does apply there.
Mhm.
Maybe if we just have a string UTF-8 type that is like I guess in this case I would want it to like inherit from the string base type and just say like, hey, this is effectively like the same as the string. All the functions that work on string should apply to this thing. It's just a different representation. I guess if we add like the inheritance stuff, would we even want type variations to exist? Or would we even need type variations? Like, is this actually something that we would want to replace type variations with, or we want to keep both?
Yeah. That's if we support inheritance, I mean, if there's a proper inheritance, type variation is probably not needed.
Yeah, I am also a little wary of getting into like super proper inheritance for types as well, though, because I think that's also a can of worms. Like adding an actual type system.
That's yeah. I also kind of like fear that like we're getting like too complicated. So in that sense, trait is probably more linear approach. So you still like decouple the actual data, but only just define the interface and selectively choose which interface you are actually supports or not. That is probably better.
What I'm getting from this discussion, I think, is that there's issues with type variations, that there are certain use cases we want to support. Like for me, it's like string versus string UTF-8 views and other things like that. And there's other things you have your own as well. And that makes sense. I think I'll just start an issue and we can kind of document like basically like type variation limitations, and we can kind of comment on the various things that we would like to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there we can figure out. I think it's one of those cases where we need to figure out what the limitations are and what's not working, and then go from there to figure out what the actual solution is. I think there's a lot of ways.
Yes, yeah. But internally, we actually moved away from the type variation. So that's one. Yeah, we are actually moving away from type variation and implement or of our types into it as a user-defined type.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
user-defined types as well.
Yeah, but we haven't actually defined redefined like all the functions for the that is like a daunting task because we have like hundreds of existing functions. So yeah, so it would be nice for us if we can figure out a good solution upstream
Mhm.
to reduce this toil for the user-defined type. That would be nice. Yeah, so I'll keep thinking and then probably create an issue and then start to adding some ideas and we can start to discussing around the issue.
No, and if you start with that, I'm happy to comment on that as well. It's
Okay.
we're running into pain points as well internally that we want to deal with.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. I think at this point I don't really have anything else, but anyone else has anything they want to say? We can do that, or we can call it and people can
The only thing
try and finish.
I'm gonna mention is that we have the what features we need to reach 1.0 discussion that we had. I guess we had talked about it in May and now it's July. I think it's probably a good topic for next meeting
Right.
when there's probably more people. But we should look to figure out what progress we can make if we'd like to get to a Substrate 1.0 by the end of the year.
Right.
And actually thinking about it, one of the things I'd want to figure out before 1.0 is the type variation stuff to make sure that's actually sorted out.
Okay, well then you should add that to definitely add
Yeah,
that to the discussion because that's where we're tracking all the, at least all the items that I know about are being tracked there.
Actually, young if you start the issue that you were talking about, I can link that into like what we need to do is like we should probably figure this stuff out as well.
Yeah.
Super cool. Awesome.
Great.
All right, I think that's it.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone. Enjoy the long weekend.
Thank you.
So.
Bye.
Bye.